Welcome to Fire Mountain Gems and Beads Jewelry Studio. I'm Patty. I'm a jewelry designer here. Today we are going to be making these amazing hammered sheet metal earrings. They're quick, simple to make, and I think you're going to really enjoy them. The materials list is in the description so you can check that out.
Get our email newsletter for beading news, sale announcements, new product announcements, and more. Link is in the description below.
We're going to start with a base of sterling silver sheet metal. It comes in this great little 2x6 sheet. It's 24 gauge. Some 32 gauge dead soft sterling wire, which is very thin like thread. And then we've got some great little cultured pearl and green apatite beads and some sterling silver findings. So the first thing we're going to do is mark off the area that we are going to snip out. So grab a ruler. I've got a ruler here. Metal ruler works really well. And just an ultrafine permanent marker, whatever brand. So this earring in particular is pretty small. It's about 2.5 inches. So I'm going to make a mark at 2.5 inches. And the red is going to come off, so don't worry about marking up your metal. And then it's just a little less than 1/2 inch wide. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a line there, and I'm going to use that line to cut. And then we'll come back over this way. I'm pretty good at eyeballing, but if you need to make marks at the top and the bottom, go ahead and do that. Then I'm just going to grab some metal snips, and I'm just going to follow along the red line and cut that out. And then snip across my top line. So that's all ready. Now there's 2 earrings, so you're going to want to cut 2 of these. But for right now, we'll just cut 1. There I have the base for my earring. We'll bring in our still block. And it's kind of curved. This is a really nice thin gauge of sheet, so you can manipulate it a bit with your fingers. Just kind of straighten it out a little bit. And so now we're going to start hammering. Don't worry about the edges yet not being smooth. We're going to fix that all at the end. Okay, so this is the hammer that I'm going to be using. It's a convex domed hammer. It is my favorite hammer to use when I'm working with metal like this. It's also got a ball peen end on the other side that we're going to use to actually do the texturing here. I wanted to let you know that we just did a getting started with hammers video, and this is one of the ones featured there. So if you want to know more about hammers, make sure and check that out. All right, so I'm just going to start, and when I start texturing the metal here, I'm going to start kind of in the center and then work my way out. I'm not going to work the edges right now until I really get a nice texture in there, because if you work the edges too much in the beginning, they thin out too much. So you want to kind of leave the edges for the end. So I always hold my piece off of the block with my fingers out here if I can help it. This is a nice long one, so it's really easy to do that. And the reason that I do that is if my fingers are off the block, I can't hammer them, which I have been known to do. So, okay, let's go ahead and get started. So right down the center, and I'm just going to do a section at a time, so I'm not going to go all the way down the piece. I'll just kind of start at this end. And you're trying to overlap your marks a little bit. Here I have one that's completely hammered, and you can see that the whole thing is a bit curved, and that's no problem. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to grab... you can use a sanding block, or I really like to use a piece of a scrubber like you'd use on your dishes. Nice coarse one, the kind that would scratch your Teflon. And it's great for metalwork though. And I'm just going to rub that over the whole top, and that takes away any tarnish or anything that's obscuring you being able to see if it's completely hammered. And so I'm looking for areas now in this that are missing texture, where there's no overlap. So there's a little area here, a little area here. And so I'm going to go back in with my hammer and just hit those areas. Now to finish this up, I'm going to really just go around the edge, and I want a really nice kind of rough edge. I don't want it to be too smooth. And so I'm going to go ahead and texture the edge so it looks really interesting. And then just take a last look at it. You might want to scrub it just a little more so you can really see it. When you're doing this, by the way, it takes all that ink off of there, so that's also really nice. And I'll just brush that away. That looks really nice. I'm really pretty comfortable with that. So the hammering is completed for this piece. I'm going to go ahead and move off the block, clean up the area a little bit. And then we're going to go ahead and take some nylon jaw pliers with a nice big flat nose like this. And I'm just going to manipulate it a little bit. So we're kind of flattening it, and it's kind of curved upward on the sides and inward on the ends. And so we're just kind of correcting that really gently. You could anneal it, put it between two blocks and flatten it out, but this is a really nice, easy way to do it. So the next thing we'll do is take care of the edges. Whenever you're working with sheet or metal of any kind really, and you're hammering, especially if you're hammering flat, it can get a little rough on the edges. And I'm just going to kind of lightly sand the edges and really concentrate on the corners because you don't want them being pokey. And you don't have to take too much material off on those corners as long as they're clean and they feel good when you hit them with your finger, you're fine. That is a really nice feeling piece of metal. Okay. All right. So we're really humming along here. The next thing we'll do is go ahead and punch the hole in the top that the jump rings will go through here to attach the ear wire. And I'm using a 1.8 millimeter punch. You could use a 1.5 millimeter punch, either one. I want to put 2 jump rings through there for a little extra security, so I will use the 1.8. And so when you're using a punch like this, if you flip it around to the back, it's really easy to see if it's centered. There's a little hole there where the punch is coming through, and it's really simpler to look at it from this direction before you punch it to make sure it's where you want it to be. And you could mark it with a pen if you want to as well. That feels really good. All right. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and clean this up. I'm going to use my sanding block and I'm just going to run it over it a little bit. You can run over it with a sunshine cloth. This is a great polishing cloth. We have different brands. This is a good one. Could also use a moonshine cloth. And I'm really rubbing that in and shining it up. The next thing we're going to do is some wrapping. So I'm going to use some 32 gauge dead soft sterling silver round wire. And I'm going to pull off around 16 inches of this. And then we're going to go ahead and start wrapping. You could wrap your embellishments anywhere on here. I chose kind of the bottom third down here. So I think that's what we'll go with now. So I'm going to just hold a couple of inches off the end so I have a tail. And I'm just going to kind of hold that, and I'm going to get a couple of wraps going with nothing on them just to get a base there. And then I'm going to pull the wire over and thread on a bead. I did this really randomly, so there's no specific pattern to follow. Just do it how it feels good to you. I'm going to grab one of these little green apatite rondelle. All right, and I'm just going to position it somewhere on the earring, wrap around, come around again, and I'm going to grab a different bead. I think I'll grab one of the pearls now. and let that fall all the way down. And I'll bring that over to the other side here somewhere where I want it to be. And you can just pull the thread under the last bead a little bit, and then I'll come around and thread on another bead, whichever one feels right. And then I'm going to wrap it a couple of times, a couple of extra times here, so I can get ready to finish it. And so I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to grab my bent chain nose pliers here, and I'm going to get the tip of that wire with a little tail here beyond my plier, and I'm going to thread it under some of the last wraps. Pull it really, really nice and tight. Check the front and make sure it's tight. And then I'm just going to wrap around and around a few times. So I'm putting it back through, pulling it out, and I'm really just making a nice tight little section of wraps, and then we'll snip it off and it'll be all finished. Really pull it nice and tight, and you want at least 3 or 4 of those, and then you can just snip off the tail. Make sure not to snip your wrap. And then make sure that it's closed down. If you need to, take your plier and just make sure that the tail is not sticking up. You can even take your sanding block and just sand the end of that a little bit and make sure that there's nothing pokey. Flip it around and arrange your wire if you need to. Just beautiful. Really, really nice. And then your original tail, you do the same thing. So we'll grab a jump ring here and open it up. And I'm going to thread that onto my earring. And while I'm here, I'm going to thread the second jump ring onto that. And then close that up. And then another jump ring. Make sure and open it up nice and wide. It's a little easier. And we're going to go through the hole in the sheet metal. Sorry, there we go. Through the hole in the sheet metal and close it up through the other jump ring. Okay, so now we have our triple jump ring, 2 through the body of the earring and 1 through both of those, and that gives us the right orientation to add the ear wire. So we'll open that up and put the ear wire through the top jump ring and make sure you're orienting it front, and then just close up the ear wire. And there you have your beautiful hammered wire earring with the green apatite and cultured pearl embellishments. Isn't that pretty? That was such a quick and easy hammered sheet metal earring. I'm so glad you're with us here today. Thank you so much. Make sure and come visit us again at the Fire Mountain Gems and Beads Jewelry Studio.